I honestly want to understand how a steam-powered spaceship works with actual coal boilers. I just think that was beautiful.
Yeah, so there are dudes in dungarees like underneath who are just shoveling in shovelfuls of coal all day into the engine of this spaceship.
Yeah, what does it translate into? Like, how do you get steam power to propel a spaceship?
Yeah, I had to watch these two films back to back. Can you imagine what happened to my brain after that?
I was talking to Rags about it because he hadn't seen it, and he was like, "How much coal would you actually have to burn to like?" How big was this ship? It's like, hey, don't consider it impossible. All right, when there's a dream, there's a way.
Do you think it was it was actually pointless, and it was just to give those guys something to do? It's like, well, they need a workout. So it's
the thing is, he could still get away with this if he says like, oh no, it's palastrium. It's a material from the whatever. And when you burn it, it creates a magical space dust that when it's put into the, because when we were looking at it, I think it was Random Film Talk, or it could have been Little Platoon, I'm not sure, but one of them was bringing up how they have a space god in their engine or something.
Because it opens its eyes at one point.
Yeah, that's apparently a captured god.
It's great how the movie shows us that and literally doesn't explain it in the slightest.
It's just like, what the... then I saw people like tweet about it. It's like, so the fuel engine for this is a cosmic space god and coal. Like, what? Why?
Well, why? Yeah, and why isn't that cosmic space god not powerful enough to transport the whole thing on its own? You need a little coal too.
I'm just imagining a Star Trek episode where Scotty's like, I cannot do it, Captain. The space god's getting tired. You need to shovel more coal in.
Shovel more coal, Scotty. Come on.
During an interview for this movie, too, he talked about how, because it's a mix of sci-fi and fantasy, the fantasy elements allow him to do anything he wants. He said, he literally said, how do the spaceships work? I don't know. I don't care. So that's your answer for why it's coal and a god powering it, because who cares?
See, but like... That's what I don't get about some of these movies. If they were in Austin Powers 4 or something, or Spaceballs, it should be, right? And they they put a battery into the wall or something. That's how they, like an actual like AA. They just they like slot it in. They're like, there you go, the engine works. Like jokes like that are great, and having like shoveling coal would be great. But then you're like, oh no, you're serious. What are you doing, Zach? Like, what do you mean?
I suppose before we go further, I should probably bring in Disparu as well, because we're missing our final guest. He's just showed up because I know he does another stream just before this. But welcome back to the open bar, Mr. Disparu. Good to have you back, man.
Great to be back as well. Always good to be on. I was just thinking, as you're describing all this thing, every single scene in this is like rapid fire problems. Just from that scene alone, my favorite bit is when she's laying these mines that have LEDs on, so they're like literally glowing, and the soldiers walk up, and then he's like, I've just spotted. They're at eye level, a foot away from him, and they're just all standing there until he spots them.
Meanwhile, it takes him a really long time as well to react to it.
Does he even spot them?
Processes it.
Because he spots her, right? Then she fights him.
No, he she's gone by this point and gone off to the next area. He finds the mines just because he looks over, right. And then he suddenly realizes there are like 10 LEDs that weren't supposed to be there, glowing in his face. But no, after she does them with the coal guys, they never did anything. The coal guys weren't even enemies. She just jumps off and starts blasting, and then they try and defend themselves with shovels. Meanwhile, there's a soldier that runs off, and she ignores him, calling for backup, because she's too busy slaughtering the guys that have just got shovels.
Does she know that the people mining the coal? Does she know if the people mining the coal are like slaves or anything? Like they're not nice people.
She fires first.
Zack Snyder wouldn't care. Like if you asked him about it, he'd be like, I don't know. It just looked cool. But I love how she kicks one of these poor guys into a boiler as well.
Yeah, and all that's happened from his point of view, he was just working, then two of his mates get shot, and she lands in front of him. Of course he's going to try and hit her with a shovel. Who wouldn't?
Isn't it so odd that Zack had her kill medics and fuel engineer people? Like, okay.
Who's the
That's really
villain
weird,
of this?
man. Like, it's a really odd choice.
Honestly, I wish they had gone with their initial kill her.
What are you waiting for, child? Do it.
I mean, the musicians. The musicians
classical. I'm going to talk about the musicians because I'm fascinated by this. This is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So
you could make an entire video just deconstructing that scene.
Yes. So one of two things is true. Either they had a pre-prepared score where they had all the dramatic beats of the scene that was going to happen when the guy comes. And so they were playing that along, or they were improvising to the scene as it's developing, and then their music is getting more impassioned.
Well, I could believe that, but then they can't see what's going on because they got bags on their heads. So
they have to go.
There's a little eye hole in there. They're fine.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I mean,
no, that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
You know when there's like a bully and he's like bullying someone and the other guy gets like a good comeback kind of thing, and everyone goes, "Oh!" They were like those kind of people. Like the moment she points the gun, they go to really tense music. What's she gonna do? Is she gonna shoot him? Nobody knows.
I think it's great as well because I'm convinced Zack Snyder really thought that was a piece of high art that he was creating there.
Yes,
it's like it's got classical music in it. That means it's sophisticated, and it's a reference to like the assassination of Julius Caesar. So that makes it super sophisticated because it shows that I know about history. And
that is unironically what I think he does hope for in his fan base, for them to talk about how you probably wouldn't know. You haven't read up on a lot of what he's referencing. This is some dude, and you're just like, shut the fuck up. Like,
I saw that. That was I didn't see a lot of defense for this movie like you did around like Batman versus Superman or Justice League or any of the DC movies.
That's the thing.
But like I saw a tweet unironically saying like this man just combined the assassination of the Romanovs and Caesar together. He's a genius. Like he's goated. And I'm like, that's the thing. That is Zack Snyder, because he does the thing. The concept is good enough. It doesn't matter how well it's executed or anything like that. The effort is there, and therefore he's a genius.
The release of Army of the Dead, I think, was crossing the Rubicon for a lot of people. That was the point where people recognized we can't defend this guy anymore. He actually just produces shit movies, and the more creative freedom he has, the shitter they become. You know, you could perhaps make the argument like, oh well, he didn't get to make the movies that he really wanted to make within the DCEU, and that's why they failed. No, he is just actually shit at making films, and he's particularly shit at writing films.
Well, his interview really highlighted why he'll never improve. Like, this is just who he is. It was like, and I don't listen to feedback. And if you don't like me, you just like Happy Meals, and you just want the dross that Hollywood's pumping out because I'm an artist, and so there's my vision or their vision, and that's it. He couldn't even understand a range of different things that this movie could have been. Like,
that's so funny. I called this movie like high-end fast food. Like, this is Chick-fil-A as opposed to McDonald's instead. Like, that's literally what I wrote in my fucking script for this thing. So that's hilarious that he said that in an interview. Huh.
It feels more like, I don't know, a Big Mac with truffle oil, like drizzled on it, or something, like some kind of veneer of like sophistication. But like when you get to the core of it, it is just a cheap piece of shit that's probably going to shorten your lifespan. Like,
a fillet of fish with caviar.
Exactly.
But all these guys we used to think were cool, like Kevin Feige, Jon Favreau, Zack Snyder, none of them are cool anymore. It's kind of sad, that whole generation of guys we used to like. So that's kind of faded.
I mean, we'd still think they were cool if they were doing good things. Like, if Kevin Feige was still producing banger MCU movies, like, I guess we'd still be pretty happy with him. He would still look like a complete goofball, but like, you know,
well,
it wouldn't matter.
I mean, I guess that's the thing. They just aren't. All three of them producing things that are quite horrid right now. I was thinking of how many other people we could throw onto that.
Filoni as well. Chuck him in there. He used to be.
I never thought he was any good. But then again, I never thought Zack Snyder was any good, really. So I was just like, different than that.
Zack, even in this, there are some scenes that look good. Like, there are sci-fi elements that look cool. He just needs somebody else to actually make the actual content that he then does the stylization around.
What would you go with for the coolest shot?
I thought it wasn't quite the resurrection scene at the start, but the whole sci-fi elements of what was it? There's a particular like a screen with the digital. I can't remember the stuff off the top of my head, but I liked a lot of the medical room. I also liked it in the previous movie when they did that kind of scene and he was like sinking down. I think that looks like a cool kind of sci-fi setup. And there's also the grain, obviously.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like a bit of a tenet now of sci-fi movies of like a character submerged in some kind of goo being slowly like lifted out of it and
so
revealed.
It was like the rest of the room kind of thing.
He ripped it off from Revenge of the Sith. Okay, that was Darth Vader's resurrection room.
I'm trying. Like, it's a good question you pose though. Like, is there any scenes where we can say, well, that's aesthetically pleasing at least? I mean, I think there was perhaps a few in the first movie where it was like probably early on, and it was just like shots of them farming, like the big landscape shots with like, you know, gigantic, spectacular moons and stuff in the background. Like, okay, that looks kind of nice. Like, it doesn't connect to anything. It doesn't matter. It's just like a simple scene that just looks good. But yeah, for the most part,
I wish I could agree, but like there was a part where we were going through it on EFAP, and Fringy noted he made the like the cosmos ugly in several shots, and we were just like we were staring at it for a while, like how do you even manage this? Because he's quite special when it comes to manipulating color and moving things around. I'm not going to say he's never created shots I like though, because he definitely has. I just don't know that I would ever pick Army of the Dead or the Rebel Moons for that.
Well, he's made color his enemy, but he's also made focus his enemy.
Yes,
where like because it was when I said to you with the first Rebel Moon, like the fuck was the DP on this, and you were like, oh, just look it up, and it's like it's fucking Zack Snyder. Like, okay, that's why you can't see anything.
It's gaudy and glossy and horrible, and everything looks disgusting. It's the ugliest set and costume design I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah,
costume design in this film is awful.
The lenses he uses, like, so I know it's like an anamorphic lens, but I don't know if he runs it through some sort of filter or something, because like when it focuses on a person, the background, like with anamorphic shots, it stretches the image so it looks really cool. But what he does is like he twists it, so it looks absolutely horrid, and then you smear his favorite color of brown all over everything.
Yeah.
But everything is too severely contoured, if you know what I mean. It's horrible to watch.
Well, Muller did a good comparison between the same scene. I think it was Wonder Woman during the terrorist sort of incident in Justice League, and it was the same shot, but it had been recolorized by Whedon so that it actually looked like people looked like they were real or alive. And then you just said like Wonder Woman looks like she's dying of fucking cancer in Zack Snyder's version because she's so like washed out and just bleh, like there's
for
no
the
color to any of
record.
it.
Justice League was famously like sickly looking because they'd tried to crank the colors up.
Yeah,
it had the same problem as Ghostbusters 2016, where everyone was like, "Ugh, it feels like
I don't think any
rainbow vomit," you know?
Yeah, I don't think any movie made my eyes hurt as much as that one. That was just taken to a ludicrous level. But yeah, similar.
Yeah, in any case, we have a lot of people who either hate color or have no idea when to stop with color. So it's like, you know, it's a great selection.
Not knowing when to stop is his whole thing. It's like when he says, "Why do you use slow-mo?" It's like, it's awesome. It's like, yeah, it might be in a bit, but you keep doing it for everything. And when you're slow-moing somebody flipping grain, maybe it's time to stop. How did you watch that back and think, no, this needs to be
because I sort of get the intent behind it, where it's like if you choose to slow-mo a shot like that of a person doing something, you're attaching a great deal of significance to what they're doing. It's like I want the audience to really appreciate that this activity, whatever it is very important to this character, and it's going to mean something to the film, which is fine. But if you just choose to do it when they're just harvesting grain, like you say, it doesn't mean anything. Like, this isn't a scene that you need to focus on. We know what they're doing. It's not even something you need to show at all. You can just say, right, we need to harvest the grain and pile it up into bags so that we can use it as hostages.
He seemed to know that, because when he was talking about slow motion, he said it's to draw attention to heroic moments. It's part of the heroic tableau. It's to literally mid-action to draw attention to the particular move, so you can see it better. Because otherwise, the action can get really cut up quickly, and so he prefers to be able to actually show, no, this is something cool they're doing. It's like, yeah.
I think he was going for a sense of like Arcadian bliss, you know, and an Arcadian grace of working in these fields in the countryside and the nobility of that. I think that's what he was going for. But you're right, it kills all momentum and it kills all the energy. Like if it's something like Terminator 2, and it's just like the nuclear bomb sequence and Sarah Connor's in the playground and everything's in slow motion beforehand, then you're building up to something. You're developing a sense of unease. But if it's just in the middle of this horrible scene that goes on forever, and there's one bit where like Jimon Honsu, I think is his name, it's literally like he's scything grain and the camera is like focused essentially on his crotch. And so you're seeing just this gigantic crotch.
There's a lot of... there's a lot of like shirtless, muscular men doing activities like that. It's like there's a real homoerotic undertone to this movie. I don't know what he's going for there, but okay, fair enough, Zach. I just
if you're that actor and you go to the premiere and you see your crotch like 10 meters squared just on the screen, that's be a weird
in slow motion.
In slow motion,
I did like this one. No pain, no grain.
It's unbelievable how much of Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2 are about grain. It's crazy.
And then in the end, it doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. This thing that's at the core of the whole fucking story, and then they're like, we don't need the grain, we've got the girl.
But that's what it was. Never about that. They even said we're going to go to this planet because we're after the Scargiver, and then another guy on the planet goes, that's weird, they're coming here, they must be after the grain. The next thing, it's like they've heard him and gone, yes, we are actually after the grain. And then halfway through the thing, it's like, I know, we were never here in the first place. It's like he wrote his whole thing, and it is literally the last thing you see is what he remembers and how he writes until something else changes, and then that goes forwards. It's like there was fighters that came in off the ship in the first place. They never do anything until fighters appear to take them down, and suddenly they're all flying all over the place again. It's like, what have they been doing for the last half an hour during this battle? But because they were off the screen, he forgot about them. Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, there's something to be said as well for the shamelessly redundant dialogue in this movie. Like, at the beginning, they have returned to the farming planet after apparently having killed Admiral whatever the fuck his name is, and they are welcomed by the villagers, and one of them says, "Oh, come inside, you must be hungry, we've prepared a feast." And then they go inside, and then they look at, there's a slow motion tracking shot of all the food that they've prepared, and then they talk about how much food there is, and then he says again, "Eat, you must be hungry," and then the private guy who's like turned to their side, like betrayed the Empire, comes in and says, "Oh no, they're actually coming, and Admiral what's his fuck is alive, and this is something we need to deal with." And then they leave and they don't eat any of the food. But they've spent so long talking about the fact that they need to eat and the feast is there for them. It's so redundant and stupid, but it's just there to waste time. And that's what 50% of this movie is.
Just watch the extended cut. They'll eat the food.
Oh yeah, does that mean there's going to be like 12 of these movies? If there's going to be 6, we're going to get 6 extended cuts, right? So we get 12.
Fuck yeah! And the challenge will be to watch all 12 in a row.
Didn't you say as well, like the extended cuts aren't just a different interpretation of the same event? It's like a parallel universe or something. Yeah, so this is like a multiverse of Zack Snyder stupidity.
I also didn't understand. They said at the beginning of this movie, I watched them back to back, so it might be confusing, like how the story, what starts where. But I'm pretty sure during that scene when they walk in and it's the feast or the not feast, they're like, "Oh, like no blood has to be shed. The ship is going back to the mother world. Everything's fine." And my first thought before that guy came in was like, "Actually, they're coming here." Was like, doesn't that mean the ship's going to go back and they're not going to care that their admiral's dead? They're not going to want to find out why. They're not going to send another ship back here and just like obliterate.
Yeah, they make
everybody.
It sound like it's a permanent victory as opposed to, well, so they will come back. Then.
It's so stupid as well. Like, I don't know. It's like, say that the US Navy was deployed for another Gulf War or whatever, and like one of their admirals just got assassinated. Would the entire fleet just sail home? Like, we can't do anything without him. Guess the war's cancelled then.
It's easier than it sounds because they have space vaginas that they just go straight through. And then they can end up on the other side of the world.
Yep.
But how does this tiny half-starved nomadic community come up with what looked like an exotic continental breakfast of foodstuffs from?
Yeah, I thought they just do grain.
They probably got it from the town, the local town. Nobody seems to care about.
It's not as if this is the Ukraine, like the breadbasket of Europe or anything. It's this tiny community that's producing like a small amount of bushels of grain. It becomes a center of all this intrigue.
I would love it though. Actually, that could have been hilarious if they laid out this magnificent feast and it was all just bread products.
Things dipped in corn.
Yeah, it's like bread steak with bread fries and served on a bread sandwich.
Bread sauce. It's just bread.
It's pureed bread.